Welcome to the Private Practice Journeys podcast, where mental health professionals learn about the nuts and bolts of private practice by listening to the journeys of 4 therapists that have taken the plunge into private practice. And here's your host, Chris Quarto.
Hey everyone, this is Chris Quarto, and welcome again to Private Practice Journeys. Hey, I just wanted to remind you of something very exciting that's coming up next month. I told you a little bit about this before. We're going to have 4 experts come on to the podcast and talk to each one of the therapists. It's basically going to be an on-air consultation, and I can't wait. And I'm going to be part of each one of those interviews as well. We've got Cindy Norton, who's one of our therapists who I interview each month. She's going to be hooked up with Lynn Grotsky. Amanda Petrick is paired with Joe Sanok. Lisa Dewey is paired up with Allison Purrier, and then Debbie Simmons will be talking to Maureen Werbach. So I'm really excited for this to be happening. I'm going to be recording these starting next week, and you'll hear them in the month of May and a little bit in June. So be on the lookout for that. However, with this particular podcast episode this week, I interviewed Amanda Petrick, and without further ado, here is Amanda. Hello again, Journey followers. Welcome to Private Practice Journeys. I'm your host, Chris Quarto. Today I've got Amanda Petrick with me, and Amanda, welcome back.
Hello, thanks for having me again.
Hey, so you've had some exciting things going on in preparation for getting married. I think, did you sell a house recently?
Oh my gosh, I sold my old house and just bought a new one with my fiance.
Oh, that's gotta be so exciting. So, did you move far from the old house?
No, just like 5-10 minutes away, but it is farther. I've been so used to living 1 minute from my private practice office. So nice to run home, and now I have to drive 15 whole minutes.
Well, I'm sure a lot of the Journey followers are envious, because I think people, especially people who live in the larger cities, probably have like an hour and a half to get back home. So
I bet so. It's like I don't get to go home for lunch anymore.
Well, listen, when's the big day?
It is in 2 weeks, April 29th.
Fantastic. And so what are the plans for the honeymoon?
We are going to Jamaica.
Ooh.
So I'm going to get to take a week off of work.
Oh, fantastic. So what made you decide on Jamaica?
I left the honeymoon planning up to him. I figure I'm planning the entire wedding. I said, you get to do all this. So I don't know anything about what we're doing every day. So
wow, very cool.
All him.
Well, that's an exciting time in your life. I know it's a big event, and we wish you all the luck and happiness to come.
Oh, thank you so much.
Well, listen, Amanda, this is April, and you've been in your practice for several months now, and I wanted to ask you a few things about that, starting off with just kind of learning about a niche. And, you know, I just asked Cindy on the previous podcast episode about this, about, you know, when you first go into private practice, do you kind of look at it from just kind of doing it more of a generalist type of practice, or do you think that it's more important to be a specialist, or maybe do both things? And so I wanted to kind of bend your ear about that and get your perspectives on the generalist versus niche.
Yeah, I kind of went back and forth because, you know, at first you think, well, I want to take anyone and everyone because that's how you build up your practice.
Yeah.
But of course, you're hearing the opposite advice on all the podcasts and blogs saying you need to find out what your one thing is. And I quickly even realized that is true. You need to find out what it is you do and you're good at, because I found out that's people actually make more referrals to you for that. And I thought I do the same for everybody else. I know people in my community. I know who they are and what they're good at, and that's who I refer to. Okay. When somebody does everything, their name doesn't stand out to me.
Right. Yeah, it makes sense. So, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, and so pretty soon, just within a matter, because when I was part-time private practice, I don't think I had my niche. I just said I took everybody.
Right.
And just within a week of full-time this January, I was like, I need to specify on my website, on my Psychology Today. And people started calling for that, or colleagues asked me, what do you specialize in? And that's who they referred to me. And I'm like, wow, that really does work.
So what made you decide that the specialization route was important or was a way to go?
I kind of felt like it helped me burn out less. And when I think about my past jobs, at an agency, community mental health agency or hospital, you did have to see anybody and everybody.
Right.
And maybe you weren't good at that population. Maybe you weren't competent in that area. And I feel like that's why a lot of people leave the field so soon. And here now I am loving every client that I see. I look at my schedule for the day and I'm like, oh my gosh, I enjoyed that one and then this one. Whereas I feel awful, but I remember going to work in the past. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's my 2 o'clock. Oh, and then my 5 o'clock. Because it was somebody that I didn't know what to do with.
Right. And you kind of dread it, don't you? Knowing that, that 2 o'clock, I don't want that to roll around.
I know, and I hate to admit that, but now because I get to screen those calls and I turn people away saying, you know what, I am not your best fit. I'm not trained in that. Call Susie over here. This is what she does. I have a schedule full of people that I am competent in, and I enjoy coming to work.
Now, what is your area of specialization, Amanda?
Yeah, so I do mostly structured CBT for anxiety disorders and depression. So a lot of the cognitive restructuring and behavioral activation. And what's interesting is I'm a registered play therapist as well.
Right, I remember that.
And a play therapist supervisor, but I don't actually see too many of those clients because I noticed that burnt me out in my last 2 jobs.
Interesting.
Yes, and so I will take a few of those on because I still love kiddos and I still have all of those play therapy supplies. But having a full caseload of that was too much for me. And I am more heavily trained in CBT, and that's what I enjoy. So I don't take too much of that on anymore.
That's interesting. So it's really, for you, it was going through the experience and finding out that there were certain clients that you either didn't really care for or that you did like working with the kids doing play therapy, but too much of a good thing maybe isn't a good thing.
Right. And figuring out what type of play therapy clients, we would get, play therapy for every age, every type of disorder. And that was very difficult, so if I do play therapy, it's going to be for anxiety or trauma. Again, those things that I specialize in, and not play therapy for behavioral issues.
Yeah.
I can't do it. And I'm not good at it. So I like to be able to screen and just be honest with people and say, you know what? You don't want me. You want my friend. And they appreciate that too.
Sure. And I think being honest about that is important. If that's not something that either you're feeling as passionate about or you still like it, but know that you can only have a certain number or else you're going to burn out. I think that's honest. I think that that's important to take care of yourself, when you're in private practice. And, I was going to ask you something, Amanda, about the Psychology Today profile, because I had asked Cindy about this. I had told her that, when I look at Psychology Today profiles, I noticed that a lot of therapists have like 100 different things listed of what they do. And it's like, okay, now if I were a client and were to look at that, I would probably feel like, okay, well, but what are they good at? They say all these things, but I have this problem, X problem. And, even though they list that, I wonder how really good they are at that sort of thing. So what are your thoughts about that?
Oh, I agree. And I'll admit that I started there. I was that person that I collect everything because I'm like, oh yeah, I could treat all of that. Yeah. And if a client comes across my page, I don't want to miss anybody.
Right.
And then slowly I realized, well, I mostly just want these handful of clients and I want them to know I'm really good at just this.
Right.
Because I had that same mindset you did. Like, if I was looking for a specialist in something, do I want somebody that just is kind of good at everything or
Right.
really good at that one thing.
Yeah, and I think that's probably typical of a lot of people that go into private practice, is that they'll take anybody because, hey, I want to make a living at this, and so I'll take anybody. And I'll just say that I treat any kind of problem or disorder, but really in the long run, that's probably not the best route to go. And you may end up actually getting more referrals if you niche.
Exactly. And like I said, I recognize that I refer to colleagues based on, oh, I know this woman that does sex therapy. I know this person that does couples, this person, but I don't know or refer to the people that just do everything.
Right. Exactly.
And so I'm like, they need to know what I specialize in so that they send me those anxiety referrals, and they do.
Yeah.
Or specifically like OCD and social. That's what they send to me.
Right. And I think that probably for the newer private practitioner, they would probably see this as a risk of, kind of narrowing down so much that, okay, so I'm not going to be taking all these other people. And it's a big risk is probably how they see it. But, you kind of going through this now, kind of have been through this to understand that it's really not that big of a risk. And it's actually probably in your best interest to niche.
It is. And I worried that it was a risk at first when I went back on my Psychology Today profile and I unchecked some of those boxes.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
It's like, oh my gosh, I could be losing that client.
Right.
But maybe I could be gaining some more that I actually prefer.
Yeah.
So it has paid off.
Yeah, and I think it's I guess the issue is, do you look at it more as a breadth thing or a depth thing? And I think with the niche, you're kind of looking at, narrowing, but just kind of going down deeper in terms of what you're doing. And so I think there's a lot to be said about that. But let me segue to our next topic here, Amanda, about learning about your personality. And, as you know, that when we see clients have so many different personalities, and it's such a fascinating profession to be able to interact with all these different types of people. But, same with therapists. I mean, we have all of our personalities too. And I think it probably plays a role not only in what we do and how we interact with clients in therapy, but I think it probably impacts us as business owners too. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about you and your own personality, some personality trait that you think has helped you in your role as a business owner.
Mm-hmm. I think we touched on this a little bit in past podcasts. So I am very much a type A personality. I am time managed and organized and ambitious. I think that has greatly helped with the business owner aspect.
All right. In what way?
So for example, maybe whether I have a no-show or I have 5 minutes in between a session, I'm like, what am I going to get done in this time? I'm going to get my note typed. I'm going to get the session billed. I'm going to get invoices out. Mm-hmm. I'm not like, I'm going to go and get a coffee. I'm going to go get on Facebook. Like I will get everything I can done. And because of that, I don't have any piles of paper on my desk. Like it's completely cleared up. I don't have anything on my to-do list.
Wow.
Everything is always done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you take advantage of the time available, and there's no wasted time is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm constantly thinking of what else can I do? If everything is done on my to-do list, I will find something else to do. Like, I haven't heard from these clients in a while. Let's check in and see if they want to schedule. Like I will find something to do to benefit the business.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Well, let's look at it. Let's look at the flip side of the coin here. If you kind of look at your personality traits and any kind of personality traits that you think pose a challenge for you, and how you've dealt with that.
So I'm probably still trying to figure out how to deal with it. I think I made a joke last time, like I'm going to die of a heart attack. Like I can't stop running and thinking. And that has posed a threat because sometimes I will even be in session and I have a tough time being mindful and present because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I have to send out this invoice.
Yes.
And so I am working a lot on mindful work and just being in the moment. It's not obviously I've mastered it pretty well in sessions, but
right.
in my personal time and after, once I get home, because I am just constantly thinking of what I have to do to work on business, and I need to leave that in my hours, 8 to 5.
But I bet that being new into private practice, it's so exciting for you. I mean, I can hear it in your voice that this is so exciting. It's such a neat thing to do to make this transition, something that you've been thinking about doing for a long time, I know. And it's so important to you, and I can hear the excitement in your voice. And so I think it's probably just hard to turn that off when you're doing something that you love so much.
It is. So I'm hoping that a lot of it's just excitement, and I don't know if I want it to wear off, but because that kind of keeps me going and wanting to come to work and get everything done. But I imagine some of that will wear off a bit.
It probably will, but it's really nice to hear that people, and it's just not you, it's the other 3 therapists who I'm interviewing too, just to hear the excitement in your voice is that you love what you do, that this is something, and not only from the standpoint of just, starting a private practice, but you're serving people in a way that's very effective and that makes a difference for them. And so it's really neat to hear that from you guys. So.
Oh, good. So this is normal.
This is normal. Yes, it's normal. So, well, let me ask you a little bit about just kind of learning about fee setting and fee negotiation. Because, that's a big thing when you go into private practice is how do you determine what your fees are? And, do you have different rates for different services? So how did you go about determining what your rates were going to be?
I was pretty lucky because I noticed in Facebook groups, clinicians asking each other, what do I charge? Is this normal? And when I first started, I had hired a biller, and now I don't have one, but she basically just told me, she's like, is this the amount you want to charge? This is what everybody else does in town.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, okay. And of course, I was just blown away, like, wow, really?
Yes.
That's amazing, because I had no idea.
Yeah.
And so I just went with it and have found out that that's the pretty average rate. Like, I'm in Topeka, Kansas, and it's based on, obviously, time of session, so much for 60 minutes, and then goes down from that 45 minutes and 30. And I've just gone with that the whole time and been pretty happy, especially hearing people from even bigger cities, when we compare on Facebook, and it's like, oh my gosh, I've got a good rate. I'm sticking with that. That's what insurance pays me.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so you kind of learned about it in a backdoor sort of way from the biller. I mean, that you didn't even ask her for that. She just kind of said, well, is this what you want to charge? And so that was sort of and from the Facebook groups. And you're right. I mean, I've seen the same thing. And, it's so nice to be part of these groups because there's so much good information out there that you can get for private practice, including rates for therapy services. And, so you look at the rates that you charge, and, some people, especially when they're first starting, will look at rates like that and they'll think to themselves, I can't charge that much. Or if they do, the first time that they have a client or potential client that balks at that and says, boy, that's a lot of money, I'm not sure if I can afford that. Have you had that experience with any of your clients yet who've kind of said, I don't know if I can pay that, or I don't know if I want to pay that?
I've had a few. So I'm pretty lucky that the majority of mine go through their insurance. So, I mean, that covers most of it, other than, their copay, or if they haven't met their deductible. That has surprised a few clients.
Yes.
And so then I always explain, as long as they're making payments, I'm happy.
All right.
They can make as low as $25 payments a month for the rest of their life, and I'm happy because I'm getting something.
Okay.
And so I try to explain, different plans. But if they're wanting to do self-pay because I don't take their insurance or they don't have any, I've had a few kind of balk and be surprised. And so, and I even put this on my website recently, like the benefits of self-pay.
Oh, yeah.
Because eventually I would love to do only self-pay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like explaining how we don't have to do anybody else's treatment goals or go through diagnosis or, the privacy aspect, and see if that entices people. And again, doing payment plans. But even the ones that were kind of surprised by it, I'm empathetic. I get that.
Yeah.
That's even a lot of money for me. But, and I'll provide referrals elsewhere if they need it.
Yeah,
I completely understand.
I think something interesting that I've noticed over the years, because I do probably about 60% insurance and 40% self-pay. And what I've noticed over the years is that the insurance companies have really shifted the burden more and more to the client in the form of higher deductibles or higher copays or anything like that. So it's almost as if with some clients, especially at the beginning of the year, where they have that deductible that they have to meet first, that it's almost as if it's a self-pay deal anyway.
It was, and that was quite a surprise since I started the full-time practice in January.
Yeah.
And so most of them had to pay their deductible then.
Right.
And this is something I'm going to have to change just in my practice of, looking up their insurance beforehand, because I'm surprised by how many people don't know their plans and how much they owe.
Right.
And so looking that up for them, letting them know, hey, these are my fees, which I already do.
Right.
You're going to have to owe probably for this many sessions.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and
you're right. It is like self-pay for quite a while.
And and I have a couple of different ways of going about that. I know nowadays there are Availity, and there are different web-based methods of checking on insurance benefits. And in some cases, that's a good way to do it. In other cases, you don't get quite the detail of information that you need. So I end up calling the insurance company to get that of information. And there's actually something I had placed on my website about the step-by-step approach in verifying insurance benefits. So I'll put that in the show notes. So if anybody wants
that's a great idea.
Yeah, and I have little videos that go along with it too. So I'll put that on the show notes. And so if anybody wants to do that, they can. But it's always a good way just to check that ahead of time, so there are no surprises, for you or the client. So yeah. So I wonder do you happen to have any clients where you maybe have a different rate for them, or have sliding scale, pro bono, or anything like that?
So regarding that question, because I get that call a lot if I'll do a sliding scale.
Yeah.
Now I'm not sure. For all I know, this is just what a few clinicians have told me here in the state of Kansas. For all I know, it's not even true, but it kind of scared me a little bit.
Okay.
I was told that if let's say we gave a discounted rate or a sliding scale, if an insurance company found that out, like say Blue Cross found out, oh, you're only charging half of that, well, that's all we're going to reimburse you. Like they could come back and reimburse less, undercharge.
Okay.
Because they find out that we're charging less. And so I was like, oh my gosh. So basically you have to charge the same to everybody or else insurance companies might come back. Again, not entirely sure if that's true, but it kind of made me nervous. So I don't offer any kind of sliding scale or discounted rates. And if a client absolutely needs that, I kind of have a list of go-to resources to give them or where to go to. But that has made me nervous if an insurance company could do that.
Yeah, that would be an interesting thing to look into, and to find out if that's just a state-specific thing, or if it's more of on a national level or something along those lines. But I'm sure that a lot of people have that same question and kind of wonder about that. So yeah, that would be an interesting thing to look into. So, well, let me ask.
Otherwise, I would be glad to.
Oh, sure, exactly. Well, let me ask you about learning from other therapists or professionals. And, I think that there are always things that we can learn from other people that we know, whether it's people that we might be in practice with or from Facebook groups. And looking at your journey so far, Amanda, I'm wondering if if there's anything, maybe some important things that you've learned from other therapists or professionals that have helped you in your journey as a private practitioner.
Oh, completely. I would say my practice today is completely different than it was 3 months ago.
Okay.
And it's entirely thanks to like these podcasts, the Facebook groups.
Yeah.
And I mean, clinicians that are, offering me advice when I go to them with a question like, oh my gosh, this situation happened. What do I do? And they're like, well, this is how we do it.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, I've gone to them saying, I am struggling getting this payment out of a client. They
Right.
found out they haven't met their deductible. And everyone responds back with, oh, we never have that happen. We collect credit card information.
Right. Yeah.
And so guess what I've changed?
Boy, you do. You pick up some really good tips, don't you? And I think that for the Journey followers who are listening to this podcast, they may not be aware of these Facebook groups that are out there that are comprised of therapists, private practice or agency therapists who discuss these types of things. So I'm wondering, are there any particular Facebook groups that you are a member of or that you follow where you can get this kind of information?
Oh, yeah. Obviously, our Facebook group, yours, the Private Practice Journeys, has been so beneficial. And then the other ones that I'm on is Melvin Selling the Couch.
Oh, yeah. That's a great one.
It is. And then there's one, it's like called Private Practice Toolbox.
Okay.
I can't remember who it's with. Dr. Julie Hanks.
Yeah, yeah.
And so those are the common ones that I go in. If I have a question, I get such great feedback immediately. And I really do. I get on it and implement this new policy right away. So taking credit card numbers, haven't had any problems since.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
Right? Or, doing my own billing was so scary, but saving money, I'm getting paid so much faster.
Right.
And I don't think I would have been able to do that without getting feedback from so many clinicians on how they do it.
Yeah. And I think there's a balancing act there because the nice thing about doing your own billing is that you have cut out the cost of somebody doing that for you. But on the other hand, as you get busier and busier, then you won't have as much time to do that, and you may end up having somebody do that for you in the future. But at this point, early on in your private practice, it makes so much sense that if you can learn how to do some of these things yourself and save yourself some money, yeah, that's the way to go. Yeah, I agree.
Oh, yeah. Literally saving maybe $600 a month, and it takes less than an hour a week.
Yep.
To me, it's so far worth it, but you're right. We'll see in the future, and it's nice to know how to do it.
And I think you said that you do that through Simple Practice, don't you?
Yes, and so it's just a click of a button. That's why it only takes a second for a claim to go through.
That's wonderful. Yeah, and so we'll put that in the show notes, and I think there are some other electronic health record systems that do that too. But I know that we were just talking just a second ago about these Facebook groups, and that's the one that I see mentioned all the time is Simple Practice. It seems like a lot of people use that one.
Oh yeah, I mean, I did my research on these Facebook groups about the most popular ones, and that got the greatest feedback. Because again, I don't think I would have ever tried it if I hadn't had this peer support.
Right.
And feedback from everyone.
Exactly. Well, let me go on to our last topic for this episode, Amanda, and that is learning from clients. So we were just talking about learning from therapists or professionals, but I think sometimes clients we have every now and then will say something or do something that'll spark something within us, and it'll make us look at ourselves either as a person or as a professional, and maybe impact how we do things, how we approach life even. So I wonder if you think back to some of your clients and think about one or two that may have impacted you, and how it's impacted you either as a person or as a private practitioner.
Yeah, I was thinking about this, and to give you an example, it's not specifically something clients said to me, but more their attitude and mentality towards me that has kind of helped me grow professionally and how I approach my business. I've noticed that when I come across almost confident in my business, they reciprocate. They see me in that light.
Interesting.
As opposed to, I have moments where I'm insecure. I don't see myself in this professional light.
Right.
And they feed off of that. So when I started collecting credit card numbers at intake, that was tough for me. I was worried, are people going to get upset? And what's funny is no one got upset. This was just my new policy. Everybody gave it. But for some reason, there was one time that I was nervous about asking for a credit card number.
Uh-huh.
And so I'm telling the client, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry I have to do this. I apologize. I know it's silly. Like, I'm sure she could hear my insecurity across the phone.
Right. Uh-huh.
And this was just, they actually give it to you over the client portal, so it's online.
Right.
But I'm just kind of giving her a heads up. It's going to ask you for this. Guess what? That one client skipped right through it. Like, you can X out of it and close down. The one person that I'm insecure about didn't fill that part out.
Wow.
And I was like, look at that. Like, because of my change in attitude about it,
right.
I feel like they fed off of that.
Well, something
mm-hmm.
important that you said is that, you know, you at first you almost feel like you're an imposter. I mean, going into private practice and trying to be this person, this business owner, and you feel like a fake at first, don't you? I mean, doing this stuff.
Yeah.
And
almost like I'm cheating people out. Money, and it's like, I'm providing a good service here.
Right.
Why did
Yes, exactly.
I get so nervous that one time?
Mm-hmm.
And they could tell.
Yeah. So I think that I think it gets easier over time as you do this more and more. But there was a technique many years ago that Alfred Adler had developed. It was called the act as if technique, where you
kind of fake it till you make it.
Fake it till you make it. That's right. And it's almost as if, you know, you just kind of act the part of this confident private practitioner business owner with your clients, even though you may not feel that way inside, but playing the part, playing the role. And over the course of time, you actually start feeling that way. So I think that's a good little technique for people who are first going into private practice to deal with these kinds of issues.
Yes, especially when it comes to the money issues, invoices, because that can be really difficult for new private practice owners. And
it can.
Yes.
For me, I think I don't remember if I was talking about this with Cindy or Lisa, but I think the whole thing about that is that there's a boundary issue because you're almost blurring roles. On the one hand, you're the therapist, but on the other hand, you're also the bill collector, or you're having to kind of function in that role at times to get them to pay, and that can be difficult to having to kind of wear those two hats. And because you don't want any negativity that could potentially come out of being the bill collector to kind of filter into your work with them as a therapist.
That makes a lot of sense and explains it, because it's tough to almost shut down our session and be like, okay, now I need to collect your copay.
But like you said, but having a lot of this stuff spelled out ahead of time in your policies to go over with that stuff with them at the beginning as part of your informed consent. I think all of that, is important and will clear up any potential misunderstandings as you go along.
And it has. The more that I've done it online. Now the credit cards are online. It just automatically charges it. Has helped a lot.
Yeah, I bet it has. Well, Amanda, if anybody wants to get a hold of you or just check out your website or Facebook page, how could they do that?
Yeah, my website is amandalcpc.com, and from there you can find my email, Facebook page, anything.
Wonderful. Okay, so we'll look forward to talking to you next month.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Amanda. Okay, really nice to have Amanda on the podcast this week talking about her experiences, and the next time I talk to her, she'll be a married woman, so that is really cool. I think one of the important things that she touched upon in this podcast episode was the whole issue of confidence, because when you first go into private practice, you might be a confident counselor, but dealing with the business matters is a whole different animal, and learning how to negotiate certain things with clients like payment, and what if they don't pay, and what if they can't afford to pay what you're charging, and all those types of matters are things that you don't feel confident about at first, and experience is obviously the best teacher. So going through those experiences and listening to these podcast episodes and to figure out, well, how did Cindy do this, or how did Amanda do this, or Lisa or Debbie? learning from their experiences is one of the best ways of doing it as well. So I'm really glad that you're spending time listening to Private Practice Journeys to help you in your own journey as a private practitioner. Well, if you'd like the show notes for today's podcast episode, please visit my website, chrisquarto.com. Not only can you find the show notes there, but you can find all of the past episodes of Private Practice Journeys and a lot of great information in those episodes. Next week, we have Lisa Dewey coming on to talk about her experiences over the past month. And until then, I bid you farewell.